Today on our 2012 Honda Odyssey, we're going to be taking a look at and installing the Airlift 1000 air helper springs for the rear, part number AL60815. Here's what these airbags are going to look like once they're installed on the vehicle. As you can see, they fit inside the existing coil springs from the factory suspension. These airbags are going to do a good job of helping to level out the load of the vehicle when you've got a heavy load in the back, or if you're pulling a trailer that pulls the back end down a little bit, because it's going to help support and not allow the spring to compress as much, so therefore it doesn't sag and the rear end stays higher. And when that rear end stays higher, what that does is help to reduce irregular tire wear. It makes it handle better because it's sitting more at the factory ride height. And it's also helping maintain good control in the front for steering and braking, but also keeping your headlights level so you can see the road at night. What's nice about this airbag is that you can adjust the air pressure inside of it anywhere from a minimum of 5 to a maximum of 35 psi, which is going to help to level out your ride as you need it and give you the quality ride that you want to have. Whereas with some of the other ones that only work as they put more pressure on them, the ride quality isn't quite as good as when you can select what you want. Since these springs help to keep the factory coil springs from compressing as much with a load on them, it's going to help lengthen the life of the factory coil springs because it's going to help prevent them from sagging as much over the life of the vehicle. Let's take some measurements to see where our factory suspension sits unloaded. So if we measure at the top of the rear fender here, that's sitting right about 30 inches. So let's go up to the front. That's about 30 3/4 inches. So then we'll add some weight to it and check those measurements again. Now we've got a load on the suspension. So let's take these measurements again and see where we sit. Here at the top of the rear fender, we're sitting right about 28 3/4 inches. And if we move up to the front, we're at about 31 1/4 inches. Now let's take it out on the test course to see how the factory suspension responds with weight in the back. Going over the alternating speed bumps, you can see that there's quite a bit of suspension articulation trying to compensate for the weight that's back there, but this is going to cause body roll and represent going in or out of a parking garage. Now going over the solid speed bumps, you can see that it comes down hard, which will create a rough ride, but also when it comes down, the suspension doesn't respond as quickly as it does unloaded. Then going through our slalom course, which would represent doing evasive maneuvers when on the road, you can see that there's a lot of body roll. Oh, and overall, it doesn't feel like it's as tight to the road as you'd like it to be when you're on a road trip with your family. Now with the airbags installed, let's take our measurements with the car weighed down again. Now with the airbags fully inflated, it's at 29 3/4 inches. So here at the rear, it's only down 1/4 inch from factory ride height. And then here at the front, it's at 31 inches, which is only up 1/4 inch. So as you can see, it brings it very close to factory ride height with weight. And the reason I wanted to give you these measurements is so you could understand how the factory suspension's affected and how these airbags help with that factory suspension. So now let's take it through our test course again with the airbags installed. Going over the alternating speed bumps, you can see it recovers a lot quicker and there isn't nearly as much suspension articulation and body roll. Going over the solid speed bumps, you can see it doesn't bounce quite as hard. It's a little bit smoother, which then helps the suspension recover quicker. And then going through our slalom, you can see that there isn't nearly as much body roll and the suspension's much stiffer, therefore it feels safer as you're out on the road. These airbags are going to help give up to 1,000 pounds of load leveling support. It doesn't actually increase the weight rating of your vehicle, but it'll just help level it out. Now, let's show you how to install it. Now to begin our installation, we went ahead and removed the tires. And once we did that, then you'll want to be sure to grab a jack stand or jack of some kind that'll allow you to lower it slowly to put under this control arm to support it, because once we take this bolt out, the full force of that spring will be ready to push this control arm down, so we want to be sure it doesn't just go down and allow that spring to fly out. So now we're going to need a 17 millimeter to remove this bolt. Once we've got that bolt out, we can begin to slowly lower this control arm to release the tension off that spring. So what we're ready to do is remove our spring. But before we do that, you will want to be sure to know which way it's oriented. If you need to, you can make a mark here and here in order to make sure you get it lined back up properly. And once you've got it marked, you can pull down on the control arm in order to pull that spring out of there. So now we can set that spring aside, and then we're ready to remove our bump stop here. In order to remove that, you're going to need a 14mm socket. There's a bolt straight up the center there that holds it in. You just want to get that loose and then take it out of there. And you won't be reinstalling that. Now the next thing we'll need to do is mark out the hole that we're going to need to drill here at the bottom of the spring seat on that lower control arm, so that our air line can go down through there and route it to where our fitting's going to be. In order to mark it, the instructions does give you a template that you can use, but I found that that template doesn't always give you quite the correct spot. Sometimes it's a little bit too far out on the control arm to where it's somewhere in there. But I'm going to mark it right in there to make sure that that air line goes down through the center and has clearance on every side. So now I'm going to drill a pilot hole through the mark that I just made. And I'll continue using drill bits, stepping up in size until I reach about 3/4 of an inch. Now you can take a file or a carbide bit to help deburr it, just to make sure that it's not going to catch and possibly puncture the bag or the line. Now what I'm going to do is some of the flexible black air line that comes in the kit, I'm going to feed it down through that hole to where it comes out up here at this top edge of the control arm. And I put some air line off a different kit that's a little bit stiffer to use as a lead wire to help go up in there. It just helps give a little bit extra rigidity. I'll take that, then just pull it through here until I've got some of that black air line that comes with the kit coming out through up over here. Now we've got these little spring clamps, and what they do is fit right over the end of the air line. And you'll just need to take a pair of pliers in order to compress it and open it up a little bit. Then you can slide it up onto that air line. Once you've got it on there, you can take the end of it and slide it onto the fitting on the airbag. Then once you've got the air line pushed on, you can take your pliers and move the clamp down to where it's on the barb to help hold that air line in place. Now this airbag, when it's inside the coil spring, it's going to need to have that barb facing down. So we'll slide it up inside our coil spring and then begin to slide our coil spring back into place. And you want to be sure you pay attention to where you marked it. And be careful not to get any of that air line pinched. So as it goes in, make sure you feed it through the hole that you drilled. Then with it lined back up, you can begin to slide it back up into place there. With that set, we'll begin to put our control arm back up. So now we'll reposition our jack stand or our floor jack. Just begin to work it back up into position. So then once we get it back up into position, we may need to possibly use a pry bar, large flathead screwdriver, just to kind of help make sure the holes are properly lined up. And once they are, we can slide that bolt through in order to get it started. Once you've got it started, you can tighten it down. Then we can remove our jack or jack stand. And then we'll repeat this same process for the other side. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the driver's rear inner fender well, because where I'm going to route my air lines to, I'm going to need to get behind this. So there's a number of different fasteners, and we'll start with the push pins. We've got one right here, which you just need to pop the center out of, and then the body of it will come out. Then there's 3 more push pins up along the inside of the fender well here. Now I'll remove the Phillips head screws. Need to remove those 2 there. Then there's one right here. And then 2 more right down here at the front of the fender well. Now we can remove the 10mm bolts. And then there's 2 more towards the front. One right there. The other's tucked in right there. And then finally, there's just this little plastic cap. It'll just screw right off of that stud there. And then you can begin working the fender well out of the fender. And then we'll set it aside. Now we'll show you the way that we routed the airline for both sides of the vehicle. Over here on the passenger side, we had the airline come up through the control arm the same way we did on the side we showed you installing, and then we took it up and just routed it along the underside of the vehicle towards the driver's side and secured it along the way just to make sure that it stayed away from anything hot or anything moving to ensure that it wouldn't get damaged. Then came down here alongside the gas tank, went around the bracket, and then headed up along the filler neck towards the gas door, which is where we'll be mounting our fittings. So now I'll measure out about the distance I'll need in order to get to the fitting that I'm going to have up here behind the gas door. Then I can clip it. Then what I can do is take another one of those small spring clamps and put it onto the end of that airline there. Then I can slide that onto the barb that's on the back side of our air fitting. Then to make sure it's secure, I'll run that clamp back down over the barb. So now I'll get the holes drilled out. For my fittings. And there's a second layer that I'll have to go through, so I'll use a step drill bit in order to get the correct size hole that I'll need on the back side. Once I've got the hole drilled out, I'll be able to verify and make sure that's the size I need. I'll put one of the nuts on the end of the fitting here and thread it down probably about 3/4 of the way. And then I can put a little ring washer that comes with it and make sure that it fits up through the hole. And since it fits, I'll take it back out and make a little bit of an adjustment on this. Then I'll feed it back up there and get ready to secure it in place. Then we can put this little rubber washer down over the fitting on the front side here, followed by a metal flat washer. Then I can put the other nut onto it and run it down to that. Then I'll use a 1/2" socket to tighten that down the rest of the way. Once that's tightened down, when not in use, I can keep my black caps on here. Now, with all of our airlines secured, we can reinstall our inner fender well. Now we can reinstall our tires. Now the only thing that's really different about doing the passenger side than the driver's side is it comes with this heat shield to help protect the airbag and the lines from the heat of the exhaust. In order to use this heat shield, you take these little tabs, bend them down so they're like that. We'll do that with both of them, and then it comes with 2 of these screw clamps. So now we'll get both of our clamps started, but we'll leave them loose. We don't want to run them down all the way tight yet. Then we can take our heat shield and slide it in there, and then tighten down our hose clamp the rest of the way. That'll help protect our airbag from the heat of the exhaust. Then we can just cut the excess off. When you need to change the pressures in the airbags, all you need to do is come inside the gas door here and go to the fittings for your right and left airbags, which you can also tee into one fitting if you'd like. That is included with the kit. You can add some air or take it out as needed, but it has to stay between the range of 5 psi minimum to a maximum of 35 psi. And that's going to complete our look at and install of the Airlift 1000 air helper springs for the rear, part number AL60815 on our 2012 Honda.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at eTrailer.com.